Hello and welcome to Lens of Hopefulness with me, your host, John Pasadino. In this episode, I interview Keri Mangis. Keri is a unique individual. She's a TEDx speaker, author, and spiritual guide. She's written a book called Embodying Soul, A Return to Wholeness, a very unique book in that it reads like fiction, but it's not, because she names characters, including her own soul. I found it to be so refreshing a read. She's working on a new book, The Essential Ingredient, Remaking Ourselves in Times of Crisis, and that will be out soon. As of this recording, it is due to be out in the summer of 2026. I know you'll enjoy this interview. Keri and I explored every avenue possible, and she was a delight to talk to. And she had insights that I hadn't heard before. So stay tuned and remember to subscribe so you can get all the episodes delivered to your subscription for whatever platform, whether you're listening or watching. Thank you.
Analyzing life.
Considering the answers.
Lens of Hopefulness with John Pasadino.
With guest.
Thought leader and author Keri Mangis.
Welcome, Keri, to Lens of Hopefulness.
Oh, thank you, John, so much for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'm so fascinated with your writing, by the way. I just looked at your book recently, and I'm going to bring it up real fast. Everybody that's on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. Embodying Soul, A Return to Wholeness. The book takes a really different approach to telling stories, because it's nonfiction, but it actually tells a story. And yes, using characters like Serene Voyager. Sound familiar?
That's my soul.
That's your soul. I'm reading this. I'm like, is this fiction or not fiction? I'm like, no, it's not fiction. Your soul is
I used a lot of the elements of fiction.
Yes.
And a little magical realism to bring the story to life. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. It's a very original approach. It was so refreshing, and I know it. I was reading reviews. They had fantastic reviews, and even on Amazon, and I saw Goodreads. So congratulations on the success for that book.
Thank you.
So in case you're wondering who I'm talking to, if you didn't see the intro. This is Keri Mangis. Did I pronounce that right?
That is correct.
I got it right. And you're not only an author, but you're a spiritual teacher. What's the best moniker for you, would you say? Because there's so much about you.
I'm not an active teacher anymore, but I do consider myself a spiritual guide. As well as, yes, a speaker and an author and a wholeness advocate, because the subtitle of my book, Embodying Soul, that you mentioned, the subtitle is A Return to Wholeness.
Right.
And that's really what I think, if I'm trying to put an umbrella over all of my work, it's about wholeness.
I love that too. And that's what I was originally attracted to you about, is the fact that you were talking about, you talk about the overarching point, the approach of the self-help industry, and how it can, well, I'm using my words, how it goes awry sometimes for people. And I've heard the term toxic positivity. Have you heard that term before?
Oh, exactly. And I bought into it for a long time too.
So did I. Yeah.
Yeah. That idea that you're just supposed to, it's also the mantra, fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that necessarily works for me. I think for me, and then the journey of that book is really about coming to terms with my emotions as they are, without having to try to change them or modify them or justify them.
Thank you. Wow. That actually lifts, like, I just felt,
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, our emotions aren't out to sabotage us, right? They're there to get our attention.
Yeah.
And even the difficult ones like anger, which has been my most difficult most difficult emotion.
Yeah.
I have found that I kind of give him a pronoun, I don't know why.
Okay.
He has a lot to teach me and is usually trying to get my attention to something that I'm not paying attention to. Some anger is maybe just, a childish response, but some anger is justified and important and can keep us safe.
I think that's a great point. You're hitting home on we're human. This was so complex, and we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And I mean, the Homo sapien version of us, that is.
Right.
And so much has occurred during evolution of our bodies and minds, and we have to account for all that, and not just, hey, I'm on a soapbox, everybody. I feel like when I see a simple meme, for example, on Instagram or Substack or something that makes an attempt to wipe it all clean, like just, do a manifestation of this saying and put everything else aside, and you'll manifest a whole new being. And I'm like, wait a minute, what about the rest of me?
Right, and that's what embodiment really is. It's this idea that, yes, I am my soul, I am my ego, I am my anger, I am my shame and my fear, and all of that is, if we acknowledge it and we learn to live with it, it doesn't have power over us, right? It allows us to be in power. And I find myself much more at peace when emotions arise, because I know that they always fade, because that's what they always do.
Yes.
And I just wait for what their message is, because there always is one. They're really wise, our emotions.
Yes. Yes. I was thinking of another interesting slant to this, and that is that I was just watching a film the other day. It's an old film called Heat, and has Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in it. And those guys are infamous for, getting angry on screen, and Pacino especially, he'll like always roar. Yeah. I grew up watching these actors, and I'm like, that's how I'm supposed to be, right? I'm supposed to blow up at everything. I mean, they have motivation to be angry because he's playing a cop, all right? And he's angry because the bad guy is doing something. But I grew up with feeling guilty when I expressed myself, even though these were the role models out there. So it was like conflicting messages, like you have to remain calm at all times. Right. But, these guys are yelling in their big stars. They can do that. So I'm like, where does that leave me? Wait a second.
Well, and there's an integration process and a learning process, because this is the story I'll tell you, is when I first recognized that I was not expressing my anger and that I had some to express, I overdid it. Right. So because I didn't have it embodied yet. And so I hurt people, and that, to this day, I have regrets over some of the things I said in those moments where I was trying to express anger but didn't yet have the skills or the whole, boundary around it. Yeah. And I had to give myself some grace during those years to practice with safe people, right? Okay, this is what it is for me to express my anger. I'm going to try this out. And I know that they can hold it.
Okay.
Before I, got to the point where I could express it in larger spaces. So it was a journey for me, because, and men and women, we're different, right? Like for women, we are definitely conditioned to suppress anger. And like you just said, you were kind of raised with this belief that, you're supposed to express it.
Yes.
But you were still battling certain conditioning. And so it's, for all of us, it's a journey.
Yes, and I love what you're talking about with that, because I have that too. I have this, what happens with me is if I feel trapped in a situation and I'm frustrated because I feel like I'm not able to control it. And it could be something most people will feel is trivial. But for me, I automatically vent it out, like yell it out. And my mother was that way. I watched her growing up. She would be the nicest, sweetest person that she would blow, and she would yell. And I heard her mother was like that. I never met her. But I asked my older cousins, what was our grandmother like? She had a temper. So I think some of it is like our wiring also. Yeah. And what we witness, what we want, what we see growing up, and then it forms a habit. And But not my siblings aren't like that though. So I don't know if you would say it's a choice. I'm also an anxious person, so maybe for me, I have this penchant for, just venting it out, where another person would just keep it in. But I haven't totally gotten it down yet, but I'm getting there. I mean, I'm much better than I was.
Well, anxiety is a tough one too for, living in this kind of a society, and everything is bite-sized and everything is monetized, and we're all of the things, right?
Yes.
Anxiety is difficult for all of us to manage, and I did journey with anxiety in that book as well.
Yeah, well, anxiety. I've suffered from generalized anxiety my entire life, from my earliest memories, and panic also. And I have tried everything. It's with me, it's just part of me. What the good part of it is that it drives me to a certain extent, because I have an energy from it. The other good part I would say is I'm overly conscientious, so I always get things done, because I'd be too anxious if I didn't get them done. But then there's that law of diminishing returns, I'll call it, where it swings over to the part where you could be immobilized by it, and it could make you not be able to do things. And I've been there. And that's, and once I was there, it was very hard to break out of that cycle, because then the chemicals are flowing and the adrenaline, and it's hard you just can't slam on the brakes and go, okay, let's shut that off now. It takes time for the body to come back to equilibrium, and it can take drugs too, psychiatric drugs.
Yeah. Well, and certainly I have anxious response to my anger, right?
Yeah,
these emotions work in combinations and pairs with each other. And so, as I express the anger, the anxiety goes up about, what are people going to think? How is this going to be perceived?
Yes, exactly.
And so, like, these two, all of the little dances between our emotions too.
Very well expressed. I like that, the dances between. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what a spiritual guide does for our listeners. What does a spiritual guide do? I've heard the term before.
Well, I don't know that it's one thing. I hope that for every single person that I encounter, it's something a little bit different. Because I do my studies and I do my research, and then whether or not it's through a piece of writing or a podcast or a talk, I share what this teaching or this learning has meant to me. And I think in making it personal, it helps people also see it as personal for them. And so what it actually does for them, I don't have any control over that, right? I hope that it might inspire them. It might even trigger them. Sometimes I actually think that that's some of my role, is because when our truths and our conditioned responses get questioned, our first reflex might be to put a wall up and to say, no, I'm not going to listen to that. So sometimes I think that's my job, is just to kind of knock on those boundaries and those borders and those conditioned responses.
Yeah.
And it might not be that anything changes for them right then, but it's that first time they heard something new. And then maybe they hear it from somebody else, and then they hear it from somebody else. So I'm just a link in a chain, I would say, of just sharing wisdom, letting it sit with people, whether they take it in or not. And I mean, hopefully, people find that they're inspired to continue on a journey of questioning, examining, exploring. I kind of have a 3-stage process that I'm talking about in my next book.
Oh, yes. We're going to bring that up, too.
Which is breakdown, which is the first one. Yeah, the essential ingredient. Thank you. Remaking ourselves in times of crisis.
Yep.
So this book takes the reader through kind of my 3-stage process of transformation.
Great.
The first stage is the breakdown stage.
Okay.
That's when you're actually saying, what if everything I've believed or invested in, what if these social contracts that I've invested in aren't true? What if what my grandmother told me isn't true?
Yeah.
It's the childhood conditioning, right? It's the social conditioning.
Right.
And we question those things and we break them down. Stage 2 is reflection, where we sit with, okay, where did I get these beliefs from? Have they helped me, hurt me? Do I still need them in the future? Are they making me smaller or bigger? Did they once protect my heart, but now they're sheltering my heart?
Wow.
And then stage 3 is the rebirth. It's coming back into the world as a transformed human with fewer of those old ways of thinking and being in the world.
I love that you have a system. If you're watching on YouTube, I was switching the camera so Keri could have the spotlight there, but I was actually shaking my head. I was like, because I love that there's a systematic approach. How did you develop it? Was it trial and error? Did you study a certain method or?
Thank you so much for asking that question. Yes, during the pandemic, when we were all kind of stuck at home, I've been a seeker, a spiritual seeker for over 20 years. And I have many times in my studies come across the term alchemy. And I was always kind of intrigued by it, but my path never quite took me there. But during that pandemic, when we were all just kind of, at least in my family, looking for something to do, I went to my local New Age bookstore and I cleared them out of their alchemy books.
Okay.
I just wanted to know. And I'm a hands-on kind of person too, and I detail this in the book. I actually started practicing some of the techniques in my home of breaking things down and re-enlivening them, which was super fun. Kind of crazy when I was up at 4 a.m. having to mix my herbs and do something crazy. But it was through that process and that study that I saw this stage happen, this breakdown, this reflection, this pause, and then this coming into something new. And I began to pair it with my own life and my own journey. And I began to see the parallels. Yeah. How even though I thought my life was going to go, in this uphill continuous growth, it was definitely more ups and downs. I had definitely been through more cycles of breakdown, reflection, and rebirth than I had, continuous improvement. Yes. And so the more I saw this model pair with my own life, the more I realized this is true.
Wow. So you were like hands-on.
I was hands-on. It was great. It was so much fun. I did something, it's called spagyrics. So I wasn't actually doing alchemy, but spagyrics is sort of a tangent of alchemy, you would say, where you're working with herbs to make tinctures. But it uses that same model and the same philosophies. And so this book, I do say, is modeled after alchemy.
I had never, as you're using terms, alchemy I've heard of, but I never heard of that other term before. So that's a new one for me to look into. And I also saw, looking at your website out of the corner of my eye, you say alchemy, also say Jungian psychology. Right. So all of my reading and all of my studying, I'm looking at, is alchemy even something that anybody appreciates anymore? Or is it just this dead science? Yeah. And I started to see that no, Carl Jung had used a lot of these principles of alchemy in a lot of his work. And he asked this question: what happens if we allow people to break down instead of constantly picking them back up right away and picking them back up right away? What happens if we let people go through kind of this darker stage? And I loved that. And so I started studying, a lot more Jungian work, got introduced to more shadow work, working with archetypes and different ways that we engage and work in the world and how we build a world. And so, yes, this book kind of combined all of that, my previous studies, my COVID studies, into a model that I saw working for Carl Jung, for the alchemists, but also for me. You're combining the best of the old and the new together, which is pretty amazing that you're able to 100%. Find that, because usually you get Jung, Freud, forget those guys. They're whatever. I've seen so many waves of self-improvement come, whether it be Wayne Dyer or whether it be Deepak Chopra, who's, on the outs now because of some information that came out. But just that style, that New Age, meditation and The Secret is another one, the manifestation style. But I like the way you dip into the traditional, because that knowledge base really is what helped build the current. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's like me with computers. I remember, because I worked in information technology, and everything I learned when I first started out decades ago, the new stuff is built upon it. And it's the people that knew that foundation that really were the best at their jobs, I felt anyway. Because I
want to share something with
yes,
you now
please.
that we're saying this.
Yeah.
It's probably a little hard to read, but these mantras, that's probably really hard to read. But they say, there we go, we flipped it. So the mantras say, what's here is elsewhere, what is not here is nowhere. Mm-hmm. The second one is as above, so below. Mm-hmm. The third one is as within, so without. Mm-hmm. All three of those mantras I had heard in multiple places in my yoga studies and spiritual studies. Mm-hmm. When I studied alchemy, what I learned is that they are all rooted in the great mantra, all is one, which came from alchemy. So exactly what you're saying here. It's one river, lots of tributaries, lots of different directions, but it's all the same truth.
Wonderful the way you express that, and thanks for that sample. And then and I will see if I could read that later on the video. If you, when you have a chance sometime, if you could snap that and send it to me anywhere you'd like to send it to me, and I'll put it into the article that I write. Because everybody, I'll put a little plug real quick. I'll give Keri a chance to breathe, and I'll do a little plug. So this is the Lens of Hopefulness podcast. It actually originates on Substack, where I have a Lens of Hopefulness newsletter. And from there, I launch an article about the podcast with the podcast that goes out to Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and then YouTube. So that's my commercial announcement. And I, like I said, I'll see if I can add in that those sayings that Keri just shared with us. Also, I want to get back to the book a second. Let's do a plug for Keri again. Out on Amazon is Embodying Soul, and I have a little secret for you. If you're an Amazon Kindle Unlimited person, like I am, that book is there for you, free of charge, because as an author, I know how that works. We get royalties, even though it's in Kindle Unlimited, so you can grab that. Or it's an ebook too, so you can grab it for your Kindle. And then the next book coming out, I believe in July, is The Essential Ingredient, Remaking Ourselves in Times of Crisis. We were just talking about that.
August 25th.
August 25th. And I have one more plug, which we're going to talk about in a second. The next plug for Keri is that you have a podcast, Awaken Your Power podcast, which I saw on Apple Podcasts, which I just got into today. I need to catch up on you, but I'm anxious to hear. I did see some of your videos on YouTube also. You do a great job with those. It's under your name also, right? Keri Mangis. And then
Keri Mangis. Yeah.
And then you have the podcast on Apple. So you are hitting all channels.
Well, yes. Now, I did put the podcast on hiatus because something had to give in these months leading up to the launch of the book. Okay. But once that happens, yes, I would love to have you on my podcast too.
Oh, done. I've been waiting to be asked. We both are challenged with the same environment, and that is that a friend just said it, a fellow creator said, we were talking about algorithms and being seen and heard and all that, how today it's so easy to put something out, as opposed to decades ago, we had to know somebody. But he said, there's too much of everything now. No offense to anybody, but I mean, I read a statistic that there are 500 hours of video loaded to YouTube every minute. Every minute. It is astonishing.
It's astounding. Yeah.
So, but anyway, what they say, and sorry to interrupt your thought, but what they say for us podcasters is to cross podcasts, is to get on each other's podcasts. That's a really great way to cross promote. So yes, definitely.
Yes.
We'll do that. I appreciate that. Okay, so we need to, let's see, we talked about the first book and about your soul, which is called, and I want to get back to it if you don't mind for a few minutes. How did you discover this, go about discovering and labeling Serene Voyager, your soul?
So that does have an origin.
Good.
Because not a whole lot of us walk around thinking about our soul as having a name. But I went on a retreat. It was a women's retreat. It was in 2014. And one of the exercises that we did at the end of the retreat was to write a letter to our soul, like a vow.
Oh.
So we actually, and I write about this in my next book, a little bit more details about how this went, but we wrote essentially vows to our soul. And then we read them aloud in front of one another, which was very sacred. I mean, if you think about just how profound that was to sit in that space, I can't even describe. And so I came back from that retreat. I still have the piece of paper with my vows on it. I'll save that forever.
Okay.
And I think it was in that retreat where where the retreat leader suggested that we give our soul a name so that you could converse. And coming up with the name was really fun. I liked the word serene, because I like the idea of being serene on the inside. Sure. And yet Voyager, my soul wants to travel. My soul wants to explore, doesn't want to sit still. So Serene Voyager. And then I liked taking Serene Voyager and making it just Seri, because then it rhymed with Keri.
Hey, it works.
So, I just had a lot of fun with it. And I found it to be a helpful exercise in just reaching that part of myself that isn't so concerned what other people think, that the part of myself that really is just here to play and experience and talk to other beings like yourself and not feel pressure to perform, to accomplish. Like that part of myself exists. And when my ego gets a little carried away with, well, you didn't get as many views and you didn't this, it's my soul that comes up and says, yeah, but did you have fun?
Again, very beautifully stated, because I think the same exact thing. I get down when I go like, how does this person have like 50,000 subscribers on Substack and they're showing pictures of their cat? Yeah. And then I think about the people that I've met on Substack, some really cool people. And then the podcast, I do it because today I was like looking forward, because I had like some little pressures and some little things that I was doing. I was like, but I'll get to talk to Keri later. And like, she's like me, we both are interested. We're like this, we're seekers. So now I get to talk to somebody. It's almost like being in therapy. So yes, that's what I get out of this, is it's almost like a therapy session for free. Oh wait, you're not going to send a bill, are you?
I will not. And I just couldn't agree more. It's about the connections, and I feel so blessed to get to do the work that I do. And that's why I can't control the outcomes of, for instance, how other people take my work, right? That's not right. Going back to that question, I always think about the Bhagavad Gita. And you are responsible for doing your work. You're not responsible for the outcome. Right. You just do your best. And
thank you. I needed that.
Trust and let go. Yeah. I mean, it's easier said than done, right? Now,
you seem, I'm going to challenge you with a question. You seem very centered. I think you are. I'm not going to, but you said earlier, you still have those other parts of you, with your emotions.
Sure.
And how would you address something bubbling up? If it did bubble up, or something through you, maybe it's grief, for example. How is your approach different today than it would have been before you went on this journey? I don't know. Does that sound like a practical question? Okay.
here's what I'm going to share with you. And this is the first time I've shared this live on a podcast. So forgive me if I get just a little teary.
Oh, please.
But I just
That's
lost my
okay.
parents in October and November and December of last
so
year.
Sorry. Oh.
Yeah. And it was kind of back to back. And they were clearly soulmates. And one didn't want to be here without the other. And I'm the oldest of three. I have two younger brothers. And I've got, aunts and uncles. And I've got, of course, my husband and my children all losing their grandparents. Like there were lots of people losing these two beings, right? Not just me. And because of the practice and the work that I've done over the years, I was able to come into a position of leadership isn't quite the right word. Steadfastness and presence and clarity. I was able to be the bridge between my brothers when they were over emotional. I was able to help ground them. I was able to be this presence for other people because I've done my work and because I knew how to move through my own emotions. And because I still have help too. I still have a spiritual guide that I see.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm not doing this alone. Nobody should do this alone.
Thank you.
And I'm just, now we're 5-6 months away from that. And I'm looking back on these months and looking back at what I held and the space that I made and the things that I did. And I'm so very proud of how I moved through, letting them go. The funeral, I did talks at both of their funerals, and I'm proud of the words that I spoke about each of them and that I was able to do it.
Yeah.
Where, my brothers, that's not their thing. And so I guess that's such a real life answer to your question.
Sure is. That knocks, and once again, I'm sorry for your loss. I understand. We just went through it here. My parents have been gone a long time, but my father-in-law just passed away. He was the last of the 4 parents from my wife and I, and he just passed away in December. And we are going through it still, but it is very different for me. And I still see psychotherapists too, and I actually started back up again when my brother passed away suddenly in January 2024. I just needed to talk to somebody. I was like, this is because it came as a shock and all that. But all this work, getting back to the core of this, your methodical approach, your studying, your labeling of your soul, your books, that to me is, I don't want this to sound wrong, so maybe I shouldn't say it. No, I'm saying, I think you're defining self-improvement. You're defining it by being it and practicing it. That's what I think. Yeah, that's what I hope that came out right. How'd that sound?
I think that's exactly right. Yes, I am not someone who tells other people what they should or shouldn't do. I like to share my journey and what's worked for me. And, like I say, this 3-stage journey in my next book is a process that I think we all go through, even if we don't realize it at the time. But I think when you look back at your life in hindsight, you will see that your greatest rebirths always came at the end of something that was hard. Yeah, absolutely. That's just the nature of the human being. As things are sort of status quo, well, our change then just tends to be incremental, right? Barely noticeable. Yeah. But when you lose something or someone, be it a person or a label or a status or a job or a relationship, and you process that in a way that is authentic and real and true versus just trying to overcome it, right? Or cover it up. Something deep changes in you. It just does. You are remade. You are alchemized. Yep. And that, I think, is something that is such a gift of being a human being. It's such a caterpillar to butterfly kind of process. Beautiful. Caterpillar to butterfly process.
I can't wait to see the transcript. I'm going to take all these and make them into memes. I'm just kidding. But they can be. But yeah, to your point about the process and all, and what I'm talking about is, I think we may both be talking about a similar type of, not to trash anybody, but there are some moneymaker people out there that package things up, and I feel they gaslight. They say, this is what's wrong with you, and this is the way you should be feeling, and you just put it in your mind and think it over and over and over again, and it's like, bury everything else and don't be you anymore. Be what I'm telling you to be via these bullet points. And then you do that, and it feels good for 5 minutes. Then you're like, wait a minute, I still have this ache in here.
Yeah, I know, I don't have any problem saying that I went down the manifestation road and rejected it because it's not authentic, not for me.
Okay.
Dream boards, vision boards, I did all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But nothing was as powerful as sitting with my own stuff, not pretending it's not there, not pretending to be somebody different, just living in the truth in the mud. There's that expression, you can make a meme out of this one too, where, no mud, no lotus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so, that manifestation work, it's beautiful and it sounds good, but it's all lotus. It's no mud. You got to have the mud.
Great. I love your expressions. I'm going to, and by the way, getting back to the learning and what you said about the transitioning and learning. So with my father-in-law's passing, he was actually 98 years old. We thought he would live to be 125, though. He just kept going and going. My mother-in-law passed away like 2 years ago or so. They were married 72 years. But my wife and I became very close to my father-in-law. We were his co-caregivers, and something did transform in me after he passed away. And I watched him face what the inevitable, the way he faced it and the way he spoke to us, and then the way he passed. And then even though we miss him so much, I came to terms with death as a result of his passing. For the first time, my grief stages were very different. And it's hard to describe that. I'll have to work on an article or something to say that. But I think it was kind of what you were saying, how I kind of break down and build back up again.
I do think I'm catching on to what you're saying, because to me it's like, once you see that death process, the finality, the smaller deaths in our lives get a little easier too. Yeah. And we're not so afraid of that whole process.
Thank you. Yes, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I wanted to show something else. I want to show off something else about you. It's on your website. Let's see if I could do this without breaking something. But for those on YouTube, I'm going to bring it up, that you are a TEDx speaker, or were a TEDx speaker at one point. Let's tell us about that.
Yes. Last August, I got to speak on the TEDx stage. What a fantastic opportunity. What a fun event. One of the things that I talk about are rites of passage. And this is kind of what I'm saying here with the breakdown and the reflection and the rebirth. These are rites of passage. Mm-hmm. And I've applied them to lots of different things over the years. But as I moved into my 50s and into menopause, perimenopause, and started to have all those lovely symptoms that go along with it, I realized that menopause, too, is a rite of passage. And it always has been. It's just that in the West, because of this culture, we try to diminish it and women try to hide it. And this is just how we're conditioned. Yeah. So this talk was about making menopause a rite of passage, as it should be. That we really are, as women, transitioning from the adult that we were with responsibilities of work and family and obligation to an elder. And by elder, I don't mean older. I mean wiser. I mean someone who is sought out for advice and guidance and wisdom. Mm-hmm. And the kind of elder that I think we're missing in our society. So my talk was also kind of a call to a return to elderhood as the way you set up a culture. versus throwing up a hero, right? I write a lot about the difference between heroes and elders.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like that. I like this concept. Keep going.
it's fun, right? Because the hero, the hero is someone we look to out there to save us.
Yes.
The elder is a community guide that everyone seeks counsel from, but they're still responsible. In the hero model, we outsource our power.
Yes.
In the elder model, we embody it.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so important because I feel like there's a great deal of magical thinking that happens in our society. Mm-hmm. It is that hero model. And I know that conflicts with me. I happen to be a Christian also, so I'm sorry about that up there. I don't mean it to, I love Jesus and I love what he stood for and what he said and everything like that. But there is a great deal of, I'll call it magical thinking, because it puts it out instead of owning it. Like you said, I think that's what you're saying, owning it. And I do believe he said to own it. I don't want to get it too deep into scripture and all that, but I believe that it's pretty much what he was saying was in a different way though. I'm not good enough to be able to quote scripture off the top of my head, otherwise I would. But
I can't quote scripture, but I can quote some of the Vedas, and the Vedic texts say, "You are that, tat twamasi." And that to me is saying we are that power that we're looking for out there.
Okay. Now the Vedas is like the equivalent of scripture on the Christian side. It's their scripture, the Hindu scripture. And I could say, I was going to say this, but I'll say it. Why not? I believe when Jesus said the kingdom of God is at hand, he meant it's here now. What it's evolved into, it's gonna come someday. But I think what he meant was it's here now. If you practice this, all this other stuff I'm talking about, like the Beatitudes and then turning the other cheek and love one another and all that, then you have it. It's here. So it's kind of, I think it's similar.
I think that's the heart of it. Yeah.
Oh,
and
good.
That again, that speaks to what we were saying earlier about like one truth, lots of rivers.
Yes.
Yes. Or one river, lots of tributaries, or however we said it. Yeah.
And both sides, in both the Vedas and the New and Old Testament, whatever, they're thousands of years old. And it goes back to what we were saying before about the foundations of where we are. And those foundations of self-improvement and what you've discovered, and what I said about computers, it's the building. And the fact that I give you lots of credit for discovering it. And you say you're a seeker. I'm a seeker too. That's why I do this podcast. Lens of Hopefulness, everybody, by the way, spread the word. And I'm talking to Keri Mangis. And, I need to mention this also, this important thing, and that is that your website is kerimangis.com. How easy is that to remember? kerimangis.com. Exactly. So, of course, the links will be in everywhere. And I've been looking around Keri's website, and I see you have some, I'm going to jump to something, transformation quizzes. That sounds interesting. And a newsletter. Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to talk about here?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so the quiz, thanks for mentioning that, because the quiz, when I talked earlier about breakdown, reflection, and rebirth, we are always in one of those stages constantly. Yeah. It's constantly moving through. And so if the listener is curious to see where they are, that's the quiz to take. Yeah. Okay.
And I have it. If you're on the video, you'll see it up on my screen. And of course, that's at kerimangis.com, and you could get it on the link. But your website is fantastic. I love the way it's broken down. And I hope I didn't go too fast for you people, because I might have made you dizzy. when I scroll that.
Yeah, but
quickly.
it is. It's right there on the website and the menu. And I have a couple other, I think I have another quiz up there too.
Yes. I did see another one. Quiz is called...
There we go. The self-love quiz. Yes.
Self-love quiz. Yes. That is a super important one, of course. We must...
Yes.
I'm reading it. I'm going to take liberties and read it next to Keri's wonderful picture. We must practice love and acceptance for ourselves first. Boy, that sounds very familiar. Once again, it's the self-love. It's the love one another, love ourselves. It's all comes full circle. And let's look at some of these questions. It says, where are you on the self-love journey? And you tell your story. And let's see what else is here. Okay, I guess I need to break it down into, that's a little bit. Okay, and here's the quiz. Okay. How comfortable am I being alone? This is a surprise to Keri, by the way. I didn't tell her I was going to do this. So, and you could check the radio buttons. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to give an example. How comfortable, this is, by the way, if you're not watching, this is where are you in the self-love journey, a quiz. So the first question is, how comfortable am I being alone? And the choices are, I can't be alone for very long without seeking a distraction. Or people who spend a lot of time alone seem weird to me. Or 3, I make alone time part of my self-care routine. I finally gotten there on that one. And I am my own best friend and confidant. I'm getting there. And the quiz goes on. Now, what happens at the end after all those are filled out? What happens next?
So, it's been a while since I've taken it, but okay. I'm pretty sure you'll get an email with where you fell, and then I think you get a little email sequence after that, just following up on techniques and so forth. I think I even have some meditation practices in that email sequence that you can practice to increase your self-love.
Well, there's one way to find out, and I'm going to take that quiz. And I also signed up for your newsletter too.
Fantastic.
I put my name and email address in there. So I'm looking forward to getting your newsletter. And just going across the board here, we talked about the books, we talked about your speaking, your podcast. I see a blog also. You blog also. Let's see what we have.
Mostly now, kind of like you, John, mostly I'm on Substack.
Oh, I'll have to find you there.
Yeah. Let's connect over there.
Okay.
And I'm probably most active these days on Instagram.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to find you there too. I see links at the bottom of your website too, so we'll find you there.
I mean, there's just so much to do. When you're a creator these days, there's just so many options.
Yes. Well, let me bring this up because you have Find My Work, and I see Medium. Oh, you're on Medium too, so am I.
Right.
Under John Passadino. And you have articles published in multiple magazines as well. So that's all on the website, people. I mean, my friends, I mean, my listeners, I mean, my wonderful. All right, I see you have articles too. Okay. And by the way, getting back to, I'll bring us back up now. Here we are. Because I'm doing a lot of show and tell on this podcast.
I love it.
What I wanted to say was menopause. And my wife is upstairs, so I won't talk too loud. But seriously, she went through it. We've been married for, as of next month, 43 years. And that was one of the most challenging times for us. I saw her go through so many physical and mental symptoms that I was like, I can't believe this is her. Oh my God. And I saw her, with flashes, the hot flashes.
Yeah.
And just sitting sometimes going, ooh, and I was like, oh my God. And the mood swings and everything. And I was like, wow, is this going to be like for the rest of our lives? But here's how it came out is, long story short. And I think it was considered early, late 40s. Is that considered early?
That's about right.
Oh, it's about right. Okay, good. Well, we're about, to give away ages, we're about 14 years later, or actually it went on for years, but you could guess how old we are because we've been married almost 43 years. So I love her more now than ever. I truly and truly do. We both now I went through menopause. I'll call it menopause. It's also, I'm making up that term. it's midlife crisis. I went through midlife crisis in my 50s. And then
Right.
she was going through menopause. So what a time that was, folks.
Right.
But we got through it, and now we are at a good place because we were able to weather those storms together. And
Yeah.
it was not easy.
You both went through the breakdown at the same time.
Yes, we did. And and also the deaths, like my parents went at the same time, a long time ago, but at the same time. And then her parents went within a couple of years of each other. So we both support each other during those periods of grief. And, you know, I know marriage is tough. I mean, I'm on Substack friends with so many people that talk about divorces and being separate and lonely and this and that and men and women. And I just sit there going, oh, man, I am so lucky because I weathered this storm. I mean, we weathered the storm together. There really is no point to that other than it can work. It can work.
There is, because it feeds back to what we've been talking about, where when you are willing to go into those spaces and live into them instead of try to pretend that they don't exist or expect something to be different, you come out on the other side transformed. And that's what I'm hearing, is that you are transformed, your wife is transformed, your marriage is transformed.
Yes.
Because you went through something and you didn't try to cover it up or pretend or, you know, walk away.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I want to come clean, though, on how we each did it. She is from the old school, tough it out on her own. Me, she might have talked to her sister, and she might have talked to her friends. Me, I'm in psychotherapy. So I got the books behind me there. That's, you know, part of my library. I always have books, and I am on podcasts. I'm listening and I'm watching, and I have my headphones on, and before we go to bed, I'm watching people like Keri. And by the way, I want to bring up, so I worked at it a different way than she did. Let's put it that way. Yeah. You're on many other podcasts. And I'll see if I could make that work. You've been appearing on other podcasts. We're both on Podmatch, by the way, people, in case you want to book either one of us if you're on Podmatch, or if you just want to make discoveries. There's so many great guests on Podmatch where we actually get matched up based on what our subject matter is. So we, you know, this is like a very interesting approach that they've taken, where they're, instead of going out there and just, you know, floating around and
can you imagine just when you talk about how much content is dropped on the hour, how many podcasts are out there.
Yes.
So it's helpful to just get it narrowed down.
So Podmatch has been great, and we're both out there, and we're both on Substack, and we're both on Medium, so we have a lot in common. Yeah. And I think I've covered all the bases across the board here. We talked about you. We talked about your speaking engagement. And are you available for speaking engagements? I think I saw that you were.
Absolutely. And I'll be doing a book tour once the book is out. So, I mean, if they can, you know, and they, I guess that's the only other thing, is that the book will be available on August 25th. And then after that, I'm going to be available for a speaking tour, book tour, at your local bookstores for a signing, all kinds of things.
Great. And if you come to New York, I will keep an eye out, and I hope it'll be in your newsletter, because I'm in New York. Okay. And I'm on Long Island, it's called. But I have access to most of New York. I mean, you know, I have access to the city. I have access to Nassau and Suffolk County.
Excellent.
Upstate's a little different, but but I hope you do come around. But it's a big country, so a lot of ground to cover. Yeah. I want to wish you lots of luck with the book. Once again, the book that's coming out, let's see if I got it right, is Essential Ingredient, Remaking Ourselves in Times of Crisis. That's coming out August 2026. In case you're listening to this in 2027, it's out already. And it's on Amazon. There's already a book out. It's called Embodying Soul, The Return to Wholeness, which we talked about. That's on Amazon, and I grabbed that on my Amazon Kindle. My guest is Keri Mangis, who's right there. And I am John Passion. This has been Lens of Hopefulness. Keri, I want to thank you so much. I've really grilled you during this podcast. I went across your web, and like I said, this was very spontaneous. I didn't say to Keri, by the way, I'm going to go across your website and look at all the tabs, and you better be up on everything. But she did
I'm glad I was.
She did really good. She did really, really good. And it's a great website. I am very jealous, and I'm going to see if I can copy it for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Love to hear it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yes. Oh, I'm grateful to have been on. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been Lens of Hopefulness with John Pasadena.
Streaming on all platforms.
Spread the word.